Hello, my name is Ralph Bianco. Yakmetio Walker. I hope I am pronouncing that right. It means I will remember you in Ukrainian. Am I right, Roman? Close? It's one of the reasons I'm wearing this shirt today. I remember Myron gave it to me and said it would make me look good on me. I think he was gaining some weight when he gave it to me. Myron was proud of his Ukrainian heritage. I remember showing me a picture of him and his brother Orky as kids in their Cossack uniforms. I told him he looks like a little soldier, to which he agreed. And yes, I will remember Myron for the many fun times and laughs we shared in some trying times. Thank you, Myron, for introducing me to your wonderful, loving family. But as important, I will remember him as time goes by. When I may feel down or want to give in. Sorry. I will remember Myron so strong and brave, and with such a great love of life, one which he shared with us all. They say a person does not leave us as long as they are remembered and someone speaks their name. So here's to Myron, my dear friend. Myron Zajac, a man for all seasons. Thank you.
Who's next? Mark?
Mark's gonna go.
Thank you. My name is Mark Belitsko. Me and Myron we shared, we're first cousins. Our moms were sisters. The maiden name was Pedasada. Roman and Orky and Myron's mom passed when I was 5. And we kind of all grew up together. And in the Hartford community, it was, as a lot of communities grow up, we all grew up around the St. Michael's Parish in Hartford. And with that parish came the normal activities with that. Ukrainian school on Saturdays, which we suffered through, of course. Then also were the scouting organizations. And going back to what the gentleman just before me said, I apologize for the Cossack uniform. We all were in Boy Scouts together, although Myron was well ahead of me. But after, in the scouting organization, which were members of the World Scouting Organization, after you're 18, you graduate high school, you go into the scouting fraternities. And in there, you do a lot of your volunteer work, like counseling, running camps, and stuff like that. So the most popular group at the time in Hartford was a group called Khmelnytchenki. And this was a fraternity, a scouting fraternity that was based on the Cossack tradition. And that's why it's so nice that you said that they were dressed in the Cossack uniform. He was destined to join that group. And of course, all of his friends were there, and all of us got in there too. And and Myron did a lot of good work. After this tradition at the viewing and the wake, or any variety of that, to read a poem when someone passes in. It's in Ukrainian, bear with me, I'll give you a loose translation after, but it is tradition from many years ago from the Cossack tradition, which seems so fitting for Myron. And I also have a greeting from one of his friends of that era. I'm gonna read it now. So it's in Ukrainian, so bear with me, it's not long. У важкій начальній тужі, всі найбільші і дружі. Біля свіжої могили сумно чола похили. Міг наш хмель ще довго жити, міг ще справі послужити. Міг ще працювати, іншим щастя роздавати. Міг ще разом з нами залишатись і здоров'ям утішатись.
Які і дощі не зміглись у громаді місця, бути всідіяльним і тому його так жаль нам. Тим вже наше серце повне суму, бо чи був ти хто ж подумав, що так скоро, так зарання ждатиме його дорога вже остання, що так хутко передчасно він для всіх назване щасне. Прощай же, Мирон, люди, друже, прощавай, хмелю дужий, прощавай ще, незабутний брате, і піввічний деш нам нами ватрі. Сни там про провстання і походи, бо пилявче корусь жовті води. Спи про те, як наше Дніпро розлогі, мріє про майбутні перелоги. So the quick translation is that, why did our friend have to leave us? Couldn't he have done some more for us, and we would have done some more for him? This is the eternal campfire that we're all going to be at. And that's really where some of this is rooted in. The campfire spirit, helping others, helping those in need, and the whole scouting creed, and helping others. And I'm just going to read one quick email from one of Myron's friends from that bygone era. Just take me 1 second here. Of course, I need 2 hands. But let's, okay. So this is from Slavko Stenchak. He settled up in Vermont, and he's one of the members that is from Myron's era, and I'll read it. Sad news with another passing of an old-time Khmer, Myron Zajac. I can recall Myron from his early days as a eunuch at Bobriuka, and his consistent humorous presence and energy driving us forward in our tasks. He was one of the Hartford Khmers who consistently worked with the younger scouts at Bobriuka. Though it's been quite a few years since I spoke with him last, I do hold dear the many fond memories of him in that bygone era. The condolences from the whole fraternity and sympathies to the extended and immediate and extended Zajac family from the scouting organization committee and the whole Ukrainian Scouts. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. My name is Sue Major, and Myron was my stepfather, so I'm Linda's daughter. So every Wednesday night, I would go have dinner with Myron at Apple Rehab. And I would walk in, and he would always say, "Oh, good, I'm so glad you're here. Let me see what you brought me for dinner." So I would heat up dinner, and we would eat together. And then he always had a list of chores for me. So, you had to complete all of the chores that were there for you. And then we would talk. And Myron and I had some really good chats over the last 2 years, I think more so than we'd had many years before that. But he would always ask about Johnny and the kids and everything that was going on. And I learned all kinds of things about him, like that he used to own a bar. I had no idea, who knew that. And I would even, a couple times, got to play a few games of bingo. So we got to play with Myron and Ed and Marie. And I didn't get to play with Hector or Bruce, but I do hear that they were fierce competitors. And they had a lot to teach me. I learned how to put good luck on your card and how to complain when everybody else was winning and you weren't. And the importance of a quarter, because you play for a quarter, so that was very important. I got to know the staff at Apple Rehab, and they would see me and they would ask what was for dinner, and they would come in, make sure that Myron got his pills, and we would chat for a minute. And where some people who were there would really become withdrawn or angry, Myron really didn't. He thrived. He made friends, he played cards, he played bingo, he was even able to garden with help from Roman. He really created a life there. And although he didn't have the easiest time with his health, he never complained about the situation that he was in. He always took everything in stride and made the best of it. And that really became a huge example to me, and I think to others who have known him, about how we should really live our life and appreciate all of the little things that we have every single day.
Hi, I'm Andy Williams. I'm Myron's stepson, Linda's son, Sue's brother. So Myron came into my life when I was a teenager, and for a bit I didn't understand the situation. He was introduced as the tenant, I think, and I knew he was Mom's friend from bowling. And immediately, you know, when you're a 15-year-old, you think you know everything, and he was kind of quite a force that came into our lives, and in a very positive way. He was immediately more than just a tenant. He was always doing something, always fixing something. As everyone who knows him, there's always projects, and you know, it was great. There's plenty to do. And at that age, you know, I wasn't a bad kid, but I wasn't, you know, maybe the most motivated kid, and I was 15, and in general, I was getting fine grades, and you know, neither of my parents were pushing me that hard. I think they, you know, didn't want to give me a hard time and everything. But here's this new adult, and he's seeing this kid he's seeing this kid watch TV on the couch a lot, and so he gave me a nickname, and that was Horizontal Boy. And I hated it. I hated whenever he would call me Horizontal Boy. It used to drive me crazy. But what was interesting is here's a new guy. He's willing to call me out on a few things, and in many ways, maybe that's what I needed at that moment. But he didn't just call me Horizontal Boy and walk away. He did everything he could to include me and say like, hey, this is what we're gonna do. This is the project. You know, I'm gonna show you how to change the oil in your car. You shouldn't go to the mechanic to change your oil. We can do it. You got a garage. And sure, maybe it was, you know, he had a guy that was easier to get under the car and do it than it would be for him. But also, I got to learn. He showed me how to brew beer. He showed me how to properly clean a floor in the appropriate Ukrainian way, which is on your hands and knees. So really learned all these things, and he really involved me. So he did two really helpful things. One is, you know, he did a lot of work for my mom and just was constantly doing things around the house and you know, making it easy for her. And he was also a really good model for me in being a very productive, helping out, not being as horizontal. And, you know, I'm sure, you know, I got out, I was more active. I'm sure when I got a car, it was easier. I was doing more things, but he modeled this work ethic that I think, you know, was very unique. And I didn't realize this at the time, but you know, it was later as I got more insight and more self-awareness that I thought about Myron and what made him the way he was and how it affected me. He was so confident in his ability to shape his immediate surroundings. You know, he had this vision for everything, and maybe that vision didn't make sense to other people, but it very much made sense to him. And he just believed that anything he could think he could do, he would just do it. There's no self-doubt, no self-consciousness, just drive and determination and fortitude. So looking back, obviously the way he was introduced to this world must have shaped that. You know, I'm sure almost everyone knows him migrating with his family, mainly on foot, hundreds and hundreds of miles across, you know, World War II devastated Europe. And seeing his parents, I'm sure, just must have had such an important impact on him. Just doing whatever they needed to do to give a better life, and still living, having another kid in Germany, and then coming to this world and you know, giving this great life to their kids. You know, I got, I think, a ripple effect of that determination and fortitude. So, and then later on after college, I got to see a different Myron, retired Myron, or Myron online, when he discovered Facebook. And he was never someone that really, you know, was a part of pop culture, mainstream culture, but he was kind of around it, and it was always fun seeing him engage with it. We would go over there, and he'd be looking at the computer, and you know, not sure if he's asking anyone in particular or just talking out loud, but there were like these cones that would come out of his head where he'd be just saying, you know, like looking at the internet and going, what is the One Direction? Who is Emoji? What is Kardashian? What's a Wu-Tang? You know, and I was writing these things down because it was so funny to me. And, you know, he would argue with us and we'd say, oh, you know, what are you doing, Airbnb? I don't do Airbnb. We only use VRBO or AIRBNB. And we'd be like, well, that's Airbnb. That's not what I call it. And so, you know, as he got to the end, even though his body started betraying him and making it harder for him to do what he wanted, his mind and his determination never stopped. As Sue said, Myron wasn't, you know, a huggy type of guy, but he was always happiest when he could be doing something for someone else. He loved to MacGyver things, even in his own personal situation and with his disabilities. And so, as Sue said, at Apple, you know, with the help of Roman, he started a container garden. It was just like, he's not letting anything stop him. And he loved those poker games, and you know, he insisted his friends would come and play poker with him. He's just, you know, he was just gonna make the reality that he wanted happen. Him and his friend Bruce, they would go down to Aldi's, they would go so far, you know, it was just unbelievable. There was no, in their wheelchairs, right. There was no, you know, you can't do this. Anyone say you can't do this, Myron? That's probably the most offensive thing that anyone could say to him. And so he would always find a way to do the things that were really important. So I think that's his legacy that he leaves with us.
I did get beat up. That'll be faster next time.
Who's in order?
No, I know.
Hi, I'm Caroline, this is Alex, we're Myron's grandchildren, Sue's my mom. I remember spending a lot of summers up north at the Bluffs with Myron. I remember being taught how to gamble when I was 10 years old, which is kind of crazy, and driving around in the golf cart, and I have a lot of good memories up there with him. And then also, I remember we went on a cruise and he would wake up at 6 in the morning to save the tables by the pool for all of us. If you've ever been on a cruise, you know how like those tables, everyone wants them. So he was always just thinking about other people and he wanted to make vacations the best. And yeah, I always remember having like the best time on those vacations with my cousins and my brother, and yeah. I know, that's all I had to say.
Thank you.
Hi everyone. I think this is one of the hardest speeches I've ever had to give, so let me begin with some basic information. I am one of the rare college-age students in the family, which means that for most speeches, I'm handed a tiny little rubric with a whole point breakdown on how to succeed. And if this speech had a rubric, I bet I would get an A+ just by covering my grandfather's tag sale addiction. But this speech is a whole difficult monstrosity. Are my words spoken for my grandfather, my papa? Well, of course they are. This is his wake after all. I'm not sure what I can tell you about him though that the others haven't already covered in intricate detail. I mean, you must know the story by heart now. The jolly and wonderful Myron Zajac, family in tow, walked from Ukraine to Germany in his youth, fleeing from the communist Russian agenda. Then I think he boarded a train, crossed the ocean in a wonderful 5-story superboat while, of course, enjoying the greatest fishing trip of his life. I mean, can you even imagine the amount of pickled herring on that boat? And after a lovely ocean cruise, he docked in New York City, the greatest city in the world, meandered on up to the Statue of Liberty and punched her over with a single fist. This is, of course, why the Statue of Liberty later turned green, and you should believe me, because I am both from New York and a college-age chemist, which are two important qualifications. He then kept walking all the way up to the quaint Colchester, Connecticut, where he settled down and started his new life. skipping a few generations because they're honestly not too relevant for me, and out I come along, ready to face the world, courtesy of Helen Zajac Eichmann. Love you, Mom. My papa knew how to rock his grandkids' world. He and the wonderful Grandma Linda spoiled us endlessly because what else should grandparents do except enable the behaviors that their parents try to avoid? My mother often enthusiastically loves to tell the story about how one day, when the two grandparents drove down to New York City to pick me and my brother up for a weekend in Connecticut, she opened the car door to plop me and my brother, only to discover that waiting on the seats were 2 plastic Ziploc baggies filled to the brim with candies and goodies and all sorts of emergency items that 2 bickering toddlers would need. I imagine this effort, though, was a tag team, so imagine my surprise when, in middle school, the behavior seemed to continue. Us grandchildren often convened every summer for a week in Danforth Bay, which, for a kid that doesn't know where she is half the time, meant a little house on a mountain in New Hampshire with cousins, grandparents, and a pool. Not a bad deal. My grandfather loved growing a garden, a passion that he and I shared, as well as a strong love for summer tomatoes. And every summer, I always was granted the opportunity to pick the fruits and vegetables from his garden, and I wasn't so oblivious then to pick up that these moments were carefully cultivated over the spring and into the summer, just so I would have the opportunity to see the joy and success of a grown plant. I guess somewhere in my growing up with him, I imagine his staunch opinionated persona also rubbed off into me, because how else would I have ended up like this? Papa, you were the one who carved out for me a home in the outdoors and a comfort in working with myself and for my own independence. You showed me how family matters above all, and I can now speak with a certain amount of age and say that these practices have already begun to leak into my everyday life. I tell you these words now because I didn't know what to say then beside your bed a week ago other than I love you. So then, I bring you all back to my original question and ask, must this then be a speech for me? A place to share all of my memories in detail that my grandfather might catch some to recall? Well, of course this speech is for me. I need to find time to grieve too, to ask you all to bear witness and help me to find a space and some words to honor my own feelings, which I can't even seem to understand. Because even as much as I miss my grandfather, I remember how my own mother feels, and I remind myself that my mother lost her father. And I love my father. And I wonder to myself if the emotions I feel are only just nostalgia for the times I shared with my grandfather, or if the sadness I feel for those in the room around me too is just selfishness on my own part or a distraction from my own feelings. And in case you haven't all figured it out yet, I still don't know what I feel. And I ask that you take these words with students' naivety, because I am still a chemist and I still want to find absolute truth in what I feel in the situation around me, which only leaves me more confused and wondering where I should go from here except to feel. To remember and feel with the people in this room, because I clearly cannot be left to feel alone, lest I drive myself insane with trying to rationalize my own self. I ask them one last question, and I promise I'm soon through. Is this speech then for all of you? Well, of course it is. I'm speaking to you after all. You aren't just here to bear witness to my own emotions, you are here to bear witness to the collective emotion, to your own feelings, yes, but more so to the collective memory with Papa. Not so concrete of one that we share, for example, Yuki Christmas, but the collective emotion we feel. Do you understand what I'm saying? I mean, look around you now. Look at everyone gathered. It's a lot. It's pretty impressive. We are not just here in honor, we are here because we all feel something for the man of the hour, my grandfather, Myron Zajac. Share that feeling together, the comfort of community, because it is truly hard to come by.
I'm Jacob, one of the grandchildren. My speech is not scripted, and I'm also not a chemist, so I'm here today to share with you the 3 lessons that I learned from Myron Zajac, my grandfather. Those 3 lessons include living life to the fullest, treasuring the small moments, and rolling with the punches, and I'll give you a story for each of them. Honestly, I don't want to use the mic, because I've already had to use the mic today. Do I have to use the mic?
No.
No.
All right.
Not
Great way to buy time so I can read my notes. All right, small moments. I remember we were camping in New Hampshire in Danforth Bay, and there's one specific moment that stuck with me when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to say for this, and so I'm just going to share it. We were playing cribbage, as Myron loved to do, and we were playing out in front of the Zinger. Is that the right is that the brand name? Cool, Zinger. And it was raining, and we were listening to John Mayer, Waiting on the World to Change. That moment really stuck with me, and I honestly have no idea why. I love that song today, and I attribute that song like to that specific moment and memory that I have. And so just, even though like it's a very mundane moment, to me that moment was very special, and that's because of Papa. So that's once how I was able to learn how to live life. Share small moments with Papa. The second one is rolling with the punches, right? So rolling with the punches, again, I'm gonna stick with the camping theme. I remember there was one year, it was like spring break or something. I went up to New Hampshire in April, and I distinctly remember it's snowing. And I was really upset that it was snowing because I was tiny, I was like 11 or something. And I remember the water wasn't running, there was no electricity. And just having that snow and having to set up the camp in the snow was something that 11-year-old Jacob could not handle. But looking back on that moment, like it really taught me to just like roll with the punches, as I said, and just sometimes you just got to dig deep and really learn and just got to do what you have to do. And I think Papa like really embodied that, just like as people have mentioned, just like the way he fought, how he continued to persevere. And so that story of just setting up camp in the snow is just how I remember that version of him. And the last lesson is living life to the fullest. I personally, terrible at this. I shortchange myself all the time. But one thing that Papa always did every time I visited was insisting on having surf and turf every single time I came to their house. Even though let's say I was 11, 11-year-old Jacob could not finish surf and turf. I could not finish a lobster and steak, 50 pounds. But he insisted on it, and it's about enjoying the life that you have, and really just cherishing those moments and just doing the best with the life that you have, because our life is finite. Thank you for listening to my little spiel.
I'm Roman Zajac. I'm Myron's brother, and I'll just speak loudly. Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So clearly, there's a theme that is emerging here, and so I think my brother Myron was a gatherer. We might even call him a shepherd. I think he kind of liked that actually, because he had that exquisite human trait of bringing people together to enjoy and celebrate life. We've heard numerous examples of that now, both large and small, but I'll mention just a few other ones. Opening day and closing day fishing gatherings with his buddies, and bringing people that he worked with from IRI, his brothers and other people that we never, we met for the first time, but then 6-7 years later, we're still doing those opening day fishing and closing day fishing things. And we played cards late into the night, late into the evening, and shared meals generally in the cold by a fire, a couple of times in the snow, and sometimes maybe even catching a few fish. Then there were the Memorial Day, Labor Day family and friends camping that we did. Lots of smiles, laughs, kids growing up, making turkeys and what do you call those things with the oil, deep fried turkeys and crazy stuff like that, and trying to keep the kids away and all that kind of stuff, swimming and maybe catching a few fish here and there. Yuki Christmas with lots of good Ukrainian food, Ukrainian soul food, if you will, but never any jellied carp. He always insisted that we didn't want no jellied carp. It's a Ukrainian delicacy. It's crazy. But anyways, family and love that really warmed the holiday season. Then, as the mayor of Cabot Court, as mayor of Cabot Court, he and all the folks in Cabot Court put together all kinds of great gatherings and fun times, playing cards, dinners, and all that kind of stuff. And of course, there was Junibration. And he and Linda would host June babies of all ages and their families for a mutual celebration. Big giant cake, fun by the lake. It was just a great time that was had by all, with lots of smiles, lots of laughs. I think those were perhaps some of the best days that we all were able to participate in. And indeed, we'll have great, great memories about. So for all of that, thanks, brother. Not gonna do that. And so I think these are the memories we'll all cherish. And it's a legacy that we can all aspire to. Now, there are other stories that I can tell you. I can tell you about the very famous return from the 1964 World's Fair. I could tell you about his Vespa motorcycle diaries, right? But maybe we'll save those for another day. Thanks.
Make a blog.
Hi, everyone. I am Helen Zajac Eichmann, Myron's daughter. Thank you for coming. Okay, what to say about Papa. I was very fortunate that about a year ago, a little over a year ago, we were able to gather in person. A number of you were here to celebrate Papa's 80th birthday. And that was great. At the time, I shared an anecdote. I shared the anecdote of the airplane game. Growing up, I was always asked, oh, you're Myron's daughter. You're Myron's daughter. What's it like to be Myron's daughter? And at his birthday party that year, I in part attempted to answer that question with this anecdote, which I'll briefly relay. As I said, it's the airplane game. So when I was little, my dad, maybe I was 5, we would play this airplane game where he would sit on the floor and extend his arm, and he would help me up, and he would balance me on the palm of his hand. And then from a seated position, he would stand up. His arm was still extended, and I was still balanced on his arm. This was the airplane game. And he would turn around slowly, very slowly, and I'd be up there balanced. I couldn't do that now. And he would say to me, go ahead and reach as far as you can. Go ahead and fly. Go ahead and fly, because I've got you. And I'm so grateful that a year ago I got to relay that memory to him and thank him for raising me that way, for raising me to go ahead and reach and to go ahead and fly. Because what a luxury to know that you have your papa right there and he's got you. But I can't use the same content. Today's a different day. We're here for a different reason. So what do I say today? What do I say here in this moment with all of you? What do I say? I thought about this. Actually kind of really tormented me for kind of a week until about 2 o'clock this morning. Does Papa, does he have any life phrases? Does he have any catchphrases, any witticisms? And what I kept coming back to was, and he would say this often, let's kick back and relax. But just hearing that my dad would say, kick back and relax, is oh so a disservice to who he was. Because kick back and relax for Papa without context means nothing. Sure, kick back and relax to the extent that it means appreciating the everyday, appreciating going to pick up a case of oil with his brother, drinking a youngling, checking that tomato. Somebody had spoke, it's a little, that side's a little green. Kick back and relax to the extent it means appreciating the everyday. Yes. But Papa would actually really only say it when he thought the job was done. He would really only say it after he was out in the yard for 5 or 6 hours. The oil's changed, the mulch is spread. He's helped out a buddy, borrowed the truck, moved a load of bricks, what have you. He would really only say it in that context when he felt like the job was done. And boy, there were some jobs. My dad was a rule bender, but not a rule breaker. He was the internet before there was internet. He was Craigslist before there was Craigslist. He was a rule bender, but not a rule breaker. So there's a story. My dad was in the Army Reserve, and actually he was part of the intelligence. Interestingly, he was being trained to be an interrogator. One reason, because he could speak Russian, and also because purportedly his personality was so disarming. But they also had their eye on him for officer training school. And for various reasons, my dad did not want to be an officer. So he had to deflect. Yeah, not me, not here. And so the story goes that one weekend when they were at their training, they would go for the weekend. Morning lineup. Envision the bugle. Everybody would line up for inspection. And the commanding officer would go down and inspect. And they got to Papa. Looked him up and down. And they looked down again. He had tied his bootlaces backwards. Instead of the bows up here, the bows were down there. And apparently this infuriated CO. But he was a rule bender, not a rule breaker. There was nothing in the regs that said you couldn't do that. But after that, maybe this guy isn't officer material. There's another story, rule bender but not rule breaker. So my Aunt Fran and Uncle Roman building their house in Hartford, and there were construction materials left over. And Papa took some trusses that were left over, sort of squares, triangles of wood, right? They were free, very important, they were free. I'll find a use for them. And he did. He used them to build a shed in the backyard of our house in Windsor. Built the shed using the free trusses, and the Windsor building inspector comes. And there was a formula to get your C of O for the shed. There was a formula that you had to meet. Certain engineering, calculations had to result in information that was in a particular range. And the building inspector comes, looks, and Papa's shed is not in the range. So he did not get the C of O, he flunked the C of O. But that was not the end, because he was a rule bender, but not a rule breaker. He launched an appeal, because what the problem was, the accepted range the Windsor Building Code didn't even fathom that somebody would use trusses that were meant for a house in a shed. So his shed was so structurally sound that it was way beyond. It was too good. It was too good, but the bureaucrat, it wasn't in the range. So he flunked him. So he launched his appeal and spoke with somebody who actually was an engineer and understood that his shed was quote unquote too good because he used the free trusses, because you got to use the free stuff. And so he ultimately did get the C of O. He was the internet before there was internet. My dad always dealt in information. He loved talking to people. He loved hearing your story. He loved spreading the news. He was, as he said, the Craigslist before there was Craigslist. If you needed something, ask Myron. Hey, Myron, do you know anybody who's got 20 pounds of 1-inch copper pipe? Well, yes, I do, as it turns out. Or, hey, Myron, I've got 20 pounds of 1-inch copper pipe. Do you know anybody who wants it? Well, yes, I do. He just thrived in talking to anybody and everybody. He thrived in finding ways to help people on both sides of a transaction, and he thrived on just really connecting people. He was kind, he was clever, he was resourceful. Heard the story when they were little in Hartford. My dad used to sneak into the junkyard in Hartford and take parts, apparently. But that's how he got his first bike. He would snag different parts from various junkyard visits and build his own bike. Interestingly, my first bike actually was from the dump, which I'm very proud to say as well, although I think, 8-year-old me wouldn't have minded the pink one with the banana seat and the basket as well. But my dad built my first bike from the dump as well. It's resourceful. It's very resourceful. He loved this country. Others have spoken of how he came here. He shares stories, very few, but 2 anecdotes. One, when they were making the sea voyage, everybody else was getting seasick. My dad was such a survivor. He didn't mind because that means they didn't want their dinner, so he ate their dinner. Apparently. But he also remembers that morning on the ship as they entered New York Harbor, and his father Joachim waking him up and bringing him to the deck of the ship so that they could see the Statue of Liberty as they entered New York Harbor. Pretty remarkable, right? But he loved his homeland too. He loved Ukraine. Not so many memories from there, but just a deep, deep, profound love for where he came. My dad passed away in the wee hours pretty much a week ago, in the early morning, last Friday. And as we awoke, sort of to the normal morning hours, my husband, back there, was, looking at his phone, and he shared a tweet. He follows a couple of Ukrainian war correspondents on Twitter, and he shared this tweet from last Friday morning, just really sort of contemporaneous with when Papa passed. So this is from Noel Reports. 3rd Separate Assault Brigade showed footage of a failed Russian attack. The attack was repelled by 3 soldiers of the Myron Brigade last Friday morning, pretty much at the same time that Papa passed. The Myron platoon, 3 soldiers of the Myron platoon, artillery was targeting surviving Russians during their escape. And there's detail on various other aspects of the battle. But the point being that there was a Russian army attack. By golly, there's a Myron brigade. Isn't that awesome? And they repelled an attack. last Friday morning, which I think is pretty awesome.
Hmm.
So kick back and relax.
Hmm.
That's his thing. Is the job done? A few days ago, there's a Jewish tradition of sitting Shiva, so it's kind of like an open house in the home. We had that gathering in New York, and some friends came. And one of my dear friends shared a saying. And she said, you know, when someone you love passes, a part of you goes with them, but a part of them stays with you. And you know what? I believe that. I really do. I believe that there's a little piece of a paw with everyone here in this room. I believe there's a piece of a paw in Jacob, and Kayla, and Alex, and me. So, while I know my dad is at peace, I don't think he's ready to kick back and relax. I don't think he thinks his job is done yet, because a piece of him is still here with all of us in this room. It's in here with me. And for that, I'm really, really grateful. Because I love you, Papa. Yeah.